Hello and welcome to everybody on my YouTube channel Cloud Fitness. So today's video is in continuation to part 1 of Azure Synapse Analytics. In case you have not watched part 1, I recommend watching part 1 before moving on to part 2. I'll keep this video pretty short. In part 2, in this video we will create an Apache Spark pool. We have already discussed what is an Apache Spark pool, and we have seen different types of Spark pools which are present in Azure Synapse Workspace. You can go ahead and check part 1 for that. And in this video, I will create Apache Spark pool, and we will be using the same Apache Spark pool in our subsequent videos in the series. So let's move ahead with the Azure portal where we will go and create a Spark pool. So guys, we are in Azure portal right now, and you can see this is the Synapse workspace that I have. I have just renamed it. It is same which we created in part 1. I just renamed it to Synapse Bhavna. And if you go to this workspace, on the left hand side you can see analytics pools over here. You can click on Apache Spark pool, and this is where we will actually create a Spark pool. So there are basically two ways in which we can create Spark pools. We can do it through Azure portal. Also, we can create an Apache Spark pool from the Synapse workspace. So after creating this Apache Spark pool, in the next video, we will be spending a lot of time inside the workspace. So let's go ahead and create Apache Spark pool from the Azure portal only now. So let's go ahead and click on this new button. And we will now in the portal we'll have to provide different configurations, different settings while creating an Apache Spark pool, and we will discuss on these settings as well now. Now coming on to the Apache Spark pool name, I'll quickly zoom my screen so that you can visualize it better. Apache Spark pool name, so let's name it as Apache Spark 05, right? So this option which you see of node size family, it is memory optimized right now. So this is by default provided by Microsoft apart from other set of options. So when you talk about Spark is a memory intensive platform. So whatever you do in Spark, it tries to do everything, all the computations inside the memory. Only if there is some issue in the memory, then only it spills the data to the disk. So this is where Microsoft came up with the option to have memory optimized as an option when you talk about the node sizes here. This is basically a very performance oriented option of using memory optimized here. So you don't have any option to choose from anything else. It is by default memory optimized. So when you go and check this node size, I'll quickly open this drop down. You can see there are different sizes available. You have your small, your medium, your large, extra large, and extra large. This node size is actually a performance scaling option here. You can choose from the different sizes of the cores. You can choose different node sizes from here, and you can do this scaling on your data, or you can actually change the configurations from here. I'll explain you how you can do it. So how do you decide on which option to choose from? So let's say your work requires 64 vCores to be taken. Now in that case, you go on and you choose your extra large cluster over here which has 64 vCores, and because you need one more core, you come back and you add another Spark pool with 64 vCores. So basically you will actually get two nodes with 64 vCores, and you actually need only 65 vCores, right? So your rest of the your rest 63 vCores will actually go in vain. They are not of use, and you will be actually paying for it. So in that case, using some intermediate option like some multiple small vCores will actually help you. So this is how you go and choose your node size. For me, just for the case of demo, I'm just using a medium size core. And now come to the option of this auto scale. So what is this auto scale? We'll first see what is the difference between enabling and disabling. So let's disable this option first. So you can see the moment I disabled it, earlier it was enabled, I had this particular option right here on the left hand side. I had this 3, and when I disabled it, that time there is nothing appearing on the left hand side. So what is this? By default, whenever your Apache Spark pool will start, right? If you enable this option, by default, 3 nodes. 3 is the minimum number of nodes that is set by Microsoft. So minimum 3 cores will spin up. Minimum 3 cores, and then it will go and look whether your data requires more number of nodes. If yes, then in that case your Spark pool will go and get the extra nodes which are required. But in case you disable it, what happens is by default, whatever number you set here, so let's say it's 10 over here right now, you can go and edit it as well. You can make it to 9, 3 or whatever. 9, 6, 3 is the minimum limit. So minimum 6 nodes will be spun up at the same time when your Apache Spark pool starts. So how this is different. So now you can see if you have a job running and it requires only let's say 5 nodes, then in that case, in this particular option, auto scaling option, where you have disabled it, your 6 nodes will actually spun up irrespective of whether your job requires 3, 4 or 5 nodes, right? So you will actually have to pay for the 6 nodes. But when you enable this option, you give you give authority to Spark to actually choose the number of nodes by itself, so that in case you, even if you have upper limit set up as 10 and but you only require 4 nodes, in that case only 4 nodes will be brought up. So in my case, let's say I disable it, then in that case I make it to 10. Now what happens is, by default I will have 80 vCores because my node size is 8 vCores. So totally I'll have 80 vCores and 640 gigabytes of memory whenever this Apache Spark pool starts, irrespective of the fact whether I need it or not. So let's enable this option. The minimum number of nodes is automatically set to 3 and the maximum limit is by default 10. So let's keep it like that and move ahead. Also, you can see the pricing difference over here. So the moment you disable it, you can see how much it is costing you. When you enable it, you can see how much it is costing you. And one more thing I wanted to discuss here is in case you disable this option, so just because you have disabled it, in that case you will have your 8 vCores readily available. In that case, it will take very less time to process your data in case your loads become higher. But when you enable this, since at an instance only 3 nodes are created, and then basically it will go and ask, hey, I need some more nodes, so please get me those nodes so that I can process the data. So in that case there might be some lag, but for that it's completely your decision. If you are okay with that, that's not a great time difference. If you are okay with that, then you can enable this option. Otherwise, if you are very much keen for having minimum time for your data processing, in that case you can disable this option as well. So let's go ahead and move to the next settings. So now here we have additional settings. So here basically you have automatic pausing time. You can enable or disable it. The moment you disable it, what happens is your Apache Spark pool will actually spin for the 7 days. It will not stop for the next 7 days, and you're going to pay for the 7 days. And when you enable it, you can actually set the time limit over here for which you want your Apache Spark pool to run. So let's say by default it's 15. I'll make it to 30 because I'm making a video for that. I'll make it to 30, and I might need that much amount of time. And apart from that, you have component versions here. So let's say Apache Spark. By default, I'm keeping it as 2.4 because Spark 3.0 is in preview right now. Similarly, you have your Python versions, your Scala versions, your .NET Core versions, and your .NET for Apache Spark, and your Delta Lake version as well. So you have all these configurations available here. Spark configurations, here actually we provide a configuration file where you have different set of parameters. Spark has more than 200 parameters, which we will actually look into in our next video. I'll show you where you can see all those 200 parameters. If you want more configurations to your Spark pool, you can definitely go ahead and upload a file where you have the configuration parameters and their values, and you can upload this file. Whenever this Spark pool will run, it will automatically take up the configurations from this file as well. So coming on to the packages, basically you have you have your Python, you have your Scala, you have your .NET, you have Java. So that basically means that you can add additional functionalities by adding different libraries, right? Since you have such a strong foundation that you can install different libraries related to your Python or anything of that sort, and you can add additional functionalities. In that case, these packages they work well. You can have these libraries installed at the pool level or at the session level. So when I say at the pool level, so whenever the pool start, it gets the set of pre-installed libraries. And the second way is to have it defined at the session level. You can go ahead and define those libraries at the session level itself. So this is where your enabled and disabled options come into picture. So these two are actually important set of configurations that you need to know. And now let's move to the tags. So tags are basically like these are related to your billing. So if you have any of your tags, you can add them. So let's say I add a cost center over here, and so I'm just giving you an example here. So let's add some random value over here. So this is how I can add a tag to my Spark pool, that this Spark pool is related to which billing center, or what is the application ID for my Spark pool. That way you can add your tags. They are not mandatory for sure. And now let's go to next, review and create. So when you click on this review and create, it runs a validation. When I say it runs a validation, it just checks whether the settings which you have provided are valid or not. So you can see here validation is successful. Now I'll go ahead and click on create. As you can see here, now the deployment is in progress. And I would also like to talk on the difference between the Spark pool and the traditional Databricks cluster that you have. So these two things are not same. This thing, like I want to make this clear, because I want to make sure that we are on the same page with this, that both these two things are actually very different. Your Spark pool is actually a metadata definition of few parameters or few characters which you have already defined. So when we created this Spark pool, we defined set of configurations. So these are the configuration which actually creates a Spark pool. So your Spark pool is actually a metadata definition which or different characters which you actually, or different properties which you add while creating a Spark pool. So by these set of configuration parameters, you actually define that yes, this is how the configuration of my pool will look like whenever I'll spin this up, and I can submit my job to that particular Spark pool with that set of configurations. So I'll give you an example. So whenever you submit a job, it will actually look whether you already have an existing Spark instance which has the same configuration as the pool that you have defined. So let's say we have created this Spark pool 05 right now. So it will actually check whenever I submit a job, it will actually check whether I have a Spark instance created for that particular pool with the same set of configurations or not. If yes, then it will go ahead and it will submit my job to that particular Spark instance and run that job. And let's say I give some other person access to the same Spark pool which I've created just now, and my job is already running on that particular Spark pool. What will happen is it will actually check whether any instance is already created on that Spark pool or not. Now the instance is already created and it is running a job actually. In that case, a altogether new Spark instance will be created for the person X to whom I have given the access to the Spark pool, and he or she can submit his job to the Spark pool and it will actually run. and there will be complete isolation of the work. I will not be able to see what the other person is doing, and other person will not be able to access what I am doing. So we have complete isolation as well as the security. So it offers a very nice isolation and security, and you can create your different spark pools for your different job types. So let's say you'll have a different set of properties for a job which has huge loads of data and is running for probably 2 days, and you'll have a different pool configurations for a job which only runs for 15 minutes, right? So you can create different spark pool configurations for each of your job. And remember that you are not paying for the existence of the pool. If I have created, I have deployed it, I'm not paying for just the deployment or for the creation of the Spark pool. I'm actually paying when I actually use it, when I spin this cluster, when I spin this Spark pool, when I start this Spark pool. That is the time when I'm paying for it. So that was pretty much for the today's video. Let me know if you have any questions on this, and I will be using the same Spark pool which I've created now, and I'll create a notebook. I'll create a sample notebook in the Synapse workspace, and I'll use this pool. I'll run that particular notebook, and I'll actually show you how you can check the different statistics and what all properties you have over there. It is just the starting. That will be the third video in this series. So I'll start from the very basics, and I'll slowly and steadily I'll try to increase the complexity of the jobs. I'll try to increase the complexity of the pipelines, the workflows that we create in the Synapse workspace. So thank you so much for being till here.